about it and looking at your midterm exams, perhaps the oral exam will be, some of you will find it very difficult. So I'll give you, you can choose one, whether you want to do oral or written exam. The oral exam will be basically the same kind of, it will come with the same kind of question, but obviously each person will have a different question. There's no repetition. So I suggest that people who feel that they've been reading the texts very carefully and feel that they perform well, orally as opposed to the written form, they'll do well. I think they'll have a good time. But people who are not sure of whether they've been reading very carefully, the written form will be probably better, because that way you can at least think about the question longer and come up with the best answer you can give. So those are the options. I'm not saying that that's therefore all the people who've been reading will take the oral. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's of course just preference. But I'm just highlighting the most obvious differences. That's all. So I will give you time to think about it until next Monday. And on Monday, when you get your quizzes, you're gonna say which form you would like to take, and there will be no the one to make up your mind, stick with it. Tuesday, yes, Tuesday. Okay, great. So we have this very intense text. Okay, yeah. I don't know if you found it intense, but it is intense. It's like someone breathing down on my neck, or someone's yelling at me how I'm not good enough, whatever. But always when that happens, with Dostoevsky at least, when that happens, there's always this sympathy from the speaking voice. The speaking voice never exempts itself from the criticism. The speaking voice is itself the first to recognize that they are too culpable. So you have to remember that, otherwise it can sound very offensive. So, and it's going. I say this because it's going to get even worse in the next novel. Camus' last novel that you're going to read, it's actually just as scathing. But, So, who are the presenters today? Okay, so one person? Sorry, you are.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. I didn't see it. Okay. But you're number 22. So we went from 20 to 20. You're 21. Yeah. You were supposed to present today, no? Oh, it was? Okay. I just, by the order of the number, you were supposed to. Okay, that's fine. As long as you guys have figured it out. Okay. So you're presenting next week then? Okay. So next week, and who else? That would be. So yes. Okay. So. That's what I mean. No, follow the syllabus. I don't remember. check the service again and find your location in the lineup and yeah. Okay. No, I was just concerned about you because you changed your schedule. Yeah. Okay. All right. So shall we then begin with presentations? So that would be Hong first. Yeah. It's fine. Your hair's fine.
Grand Inquisitor, President.
Yes. You didn't get one. Oh.
Hi, I am Hyungmin Kim. Today, I'm going to talk about the Grand Inquisitor, and just as the professor just mentioned, I think it was one of the most philosophically dense passages in this course, in my opinion. Although it was short in length, there was a lot to think about. And before I start, I have to say that some of the insights and arguments that I make in my presentation would be not radically different, but quite different from what you guys thought. So it contains a lot of my personal opinions and interpretations. So if you have any questions, then feel free to ask me after the presentation. So just a basic introduction of the text. On the surface, this text is a parable that is set in Inquisition-era Sevilla. Here, Christ returns quietly, but not as a triumphant judge, but in the same humble form we see in the Gospels. So he heals, he comforts, and he performs simple acts of compassion, and immediately he is arrested by the Grand Inquisitor. The rest of the story is a monologue. There is the old cardinal, the Inquisitor, who's 90 years old. He visits Christ inside his cell, and he explains over 13 hunting pages why the church no longer needs him, and why his gift of freedom is in fact the cause of humanity's suffering. His argument is that Christ has rejected the three temptations, which is bread, miracle, and authority, because Jesus valued spiritual freedom more than stability. But the Inquisitor claims that human beings cannot bear that freedom. We crave certainty, structure, and security. That's what he says. So the church has corrected Christ's work by taking freedom away and giving comfort in its place. The author Dostoevsky stages this as a confrontation between two worlds, in my opinion, which is silent and divine love versus authoritarian, paternalistic love, and freedom versus happiness. And I think the story ultimately asks what human beings truly desire, not abstractly, but existentially, about if we want freedom, or do we really want freedom, or do we want comfort? And with this framing, I will move on to my first insight, which is the Grand Inquisitor as an inverted savior, but not simply an evil, blasphemic figure. Here are some textual evidences to prove this point. Here at the very top it says, "We are not with you, but with him." There is our secret. So if you read the text, we could easily conclude that him is Satan. The Grand Inquisitor is saying that he refused Jesus' lessons, but he refuses to follow Jesus, but he follows the logic of Satan. And below that, it's there is nothing more seductive for man than the freedom of his conscience, but there is nothing more tormenting for him. I think this is one of the key passages in the text. I'll explain furthermore. It says, all will be happy, and all will be happy, all the millions of beings except for the 100,000 who govern them. For only we who preserve the mystery, only we shall be unhappy. There will be thousands upon millions of happy babes and 100,000 martyrs who have taken upon themselves the curse of the knowledge of good and evil. So here comes my first point. I think that the Grand Inquisitor in the text is not a mere heretic, an evil person, but he's actually kind of a tragic savior figure who is acting from a kind of distorted form of love, in my opinion. So the Inquisitor, he openly admits that the church aligned itself not with Christ, but with Satan's logic, as stated clearly in the first example. But crucially, he is not saying this because he worships evil, he worships Satan. His logic is more paternalistic. He believes that Christ's path is a path of radical spiritual freedom and is possible only for a very tiny amount of elite people, and the rest of humanity, he says, collapses under the weight of freedom. So in his view, someone must lie and somebody must carry guilt so that the weak may live peacefully. So the Grand Inquisitor is a person that sees himself as that someone, and he's basically saying that he's taking one for the team. For the second point, I think he fully understands Christ's gift of freedom, but he rejects it precisely because he understands it better than anyone else in the text. We could easily see that the Inquisitor is not ignorant. He fully grasps Christ's core teaching that real love must be free. But understanding that ideal makes him despair of humanity even more. He decides that freedom is too heavy for ordinary people to accept, and so he withholds the gift and he bears its burden alone. So to his eyes, he is making a sacrifice. He is taking sin and responsibility onto himself so the masses can rest and so the masses could feel inner peace. And he sees himself, in other words, as a savior against Christ. And a bit deeper interpretation, I think this is where the story becomes a bit debatable. I think Dostoevsky doesn't portray the Grand Inquisitor as a cartoon villain. He is a very intelligent, coherent, and almost disturbingly persuasive. And I think his logic is very chilling because the Inquisitor's logic is grounded in a kind of love, a paternalistic love that believes ordinary people must be protected from themselves. And in this view, freedom is not a right, it's a burden. And the Inquisitor believes that he is the one who must carry that burden, and he and the 100,000 martyrs will live with the knowledge of good and evil, while the rest of humanity lives like happy babes. So this resembles an inverted form of Christ's own sacrifice, where Christ suffers to free humanity, the Inquisitor suffers to unfree humanity for the sake of human beings. And this, my interpretation becomes a bit more unsettling if we consider it through the lens of modern political theory. Much like a lot of democratic states today that claim the right to restrict freedoms for the own good of the people, the Inquisitor claims the same authority. So I think his logic really resembles real-world paternalism. And in this case, we could think examples like censorship for public safety, or surveillance cameras for security, or authoritarian policies to protect citizens. And these are precisely the moments when the state becomes a Grand Inquisitor who is a protector, whose protection becomes indistinguishable from domination. And I think the Inquisitor may be wrong, but I don't think he's insane. He may be evil, but he doesn't have a malicious intent. He may be oppressive, but he is somehow quite self-sacrificing to a certain extent. And I think this is what makes him an inverted savior. His tragedy is that he believes Christ's gift must be rejected in order to protect Christ's creatures, and he becomes the ruler who uses his name while betraying Christ's vision. So I think it's a form of inverted love. Moving on to my second insight, which is about the ending, where Christ kisses the Grand Inquisitor as a response to all of that yapping. So here's the textual evidence. It's basically Christ kissing the Inquisitor in the lips, and the Inquisitor shudders. He opens the door and says, "Go and do not come back ever." The text clearly states that Christ's kiss burns the Inquisitor in his heart, but the old man remains with his former idea. And I think this was very interesting because he was basically he was criticizing, condemning, demonizing Jesus Christ for 13 pages long, and a sudden kiss just made his heart burn. So I think this was a very interesting scene. So the first point is the fact that Christ was answering with absolute silence. Christ has the authority to respond, correct, or condemn because he is literally Jesus Christ, but he refuses the entire arena of rational debate. He simply remains silent to all the Inquisitor's opinions, and the Inquisitor controls his language, and he kind of opts out from the arena of logic. The second point is the kiss producing an involuntary rupture in the Inquisitor. So this Inquisitor was a man who has executed thousands of trembles, and I think Dostoevsky emphasizes this physical reaction by saying that the kiss has burned the Inquisitor's heart, and that the kiss bypasses his intellect, and it hit him very hard at the level of emotion, and it really hit him, And the last point is that the fact that he still remains with his idea, although his heart was burned and he trembled for a second. So the Inquisitor decides to release Christ, but he does not release his worldview. The kiss shakes him for sure, but it does not convert him. And I think this is a part where the text kind of says that the conflict between love and control remains unresolved. And furthermore, I think the interpretation, Christ's kiss is, of course, the culmination of the text, one of the most powerful moments in the text, and it is a reply that operates entirely outside the realms of language. This is very crucial because the Inquisitor's entire power comes from his mastery of words, which is based on arguments, doctrines, rational systems, and language. But Jesus, on the other hand, by staying silent, he refuses to fight on those terms, and I think he very much resembles the prosecutor that we have seen in The Stranger. And I think this connects with what we studied in Camus' two novels, The Stranger and The Plague, where Camus shows how language collapses at the edges of meaning. For example, when the priest confronts Meursault, or when Dr. Ryu confronts death, words fail, but the body speaks where the language cannot. And I think this is where the part where Dostoevsky and Camus kind of intertwine to each other. And the same thing basically happens in this very part of the text, where Christ does not try to win a debate, does not offer a counter-argument, but he demonstrates a truth that cannot be stated, but only experienced through the body. And I think Dostoevsky is suggesting that faith is not a matter of intellectual mastery or logic. It happens through encounter, it happens through the body and through love. And I think this kiss reveals a divine mystery that the Inquisitor's logic cannot absorb. But as I stated in the third key point, the Inquisitor does not convert. It shakes him, but it does not break his system. He just sends Christ away by saying, "Do not come back ever again." So this moment shows two truths simultaneously. The first thing that saying that love cannot break through reason's defenses. The trembling of the Inquisitor shows that even the most rigid ideology has cracks. But secondly, love does not force itself. The Inquisitor chooses control over freedom and ideology over encounter. And Christ offers him a possibility, but the Inquisitor chooses certainty. And this unresolved tension is the heart of this poem, that freedom cannot be imposed, not even by a godly figure. So wrapping up, I think Dostoevsky uses this story, this parable, not to just give answers, but to expose tensions between freedom and security, love, control, and reason and mystery. And the Grand Inquisitor embodies the danger of a world where compassion turns into domination, and where protecting people becomes a justification for enslaving them. Christ, through his silence and through his kiss, reveals an alternative, that true transformation happens not through systems, but through encounters, through something deeper than language, deeper than ideology, deeper than logic. And in that brief, wordless gesture, Dostoevsky offers one of the most profound responses to the tyranny of reason and the fragility of human freedom. And the key questions that I brought up with
I'm sorry, did you say tyranny of something? Is this the last part?
tyranny of reason
Reason, okay, thank you.
and the fragility of human freedom. Questions are, does the Inquisitor truly reject Christ's freedom, or does his trembling response to the kiss reveal that human beings secretly desire the very freedom and love they outwardly fear? And the second one is the Inquisitor's betrayal actually the most extreme but misguided form of devotion? An attempt to fix Christ's work because the Inquisitor takes it much more seriously than ordinary believers that were mentioned in the text.
Great, thank you. Yeah, great questions. And I like how you keep playing with this antagonism. Your question always has this, but that at the same time. I mean, your interpretations as well, which is a very good form of thinking, so I appreciate that. Yeah. Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. So, how would you interpret then? I'm not mispronounce the name, so I'm really sorry. But then Alyosha, he like kisses Ivan. So, do you think that these two are parallel to each other? Because like we don't really know the characterizations of the brothers that much in just like this chapter, but like I think they have like a similar kind of tension of one's more on the faith side, one's more on the reason side, and there is lots of parallels between this, and then also the biblical stories referenced in the Grand Inquisitor. So how would you like interpret that narrative?
I think it's parallel to a certain extent because Alyosha and Ivan, they were clashing. I think Ivan's an atheist, and Alyosha, is it a she? He's a divine Christian in the text. So the fact that he kissed Ivan, it kind of is related to Jesus kissing the Inquisitor, because I think the two characters and Ivan and Alyosha, they clash in the similar sense. So I think that's possible.
Yeah, so that's why I suggested in my discussion question, you have to think about the three levels. Because if we the Inquisitor's argument at that level, it's easy enough to follow. But what Ivan is doing with that story is another level. And what the text, we can almost say Dostoevsky is doing with that is another level. So this is why this text is such a sophisticated piece of work. You have to grasp all three levels to be able to say actually you understood what's going on. That's the difficulty. There are links, hints, and the kiss is obviously a hint. How to link at least the first and the second level. And then based on all that, you come up with your own kind of reading of the text as such, then you arrive at the third level. So there is a parallel. The question is what to do with it. What's the meaning of that parallel? But I mean, we still have another presentation, so perhaps we will get there. But any thoughts at this point?
I feel like it's a parallel because Alyosha also calls Ivan's story as the senseless document of a senseless student, right? So basically, I feel like both Alyosha case and then Jesus' case is both trying to show how love and compassion can sort of override this like ruthless logic. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
I wanted to ask a question which doesn't have a certain answer, but why do you think like they chose the kiss to show the form of love, not a hug or a smile or anything else?
Because we speak through the mouth, and a kiss is basically covering the mouth. Yeah, I guess. I've never thought about that, but I think kiss is much more intimate than a hug, so it was a better device to kind of show his arguments. Never thought of that, but
Well, I like the connection with speech. It's he's not, of course, saying, okay, enough of your words. But there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that, but enough of words in a very loving sense. I know. Answers to questions? These are, serious questions. I hope you have some answers, everyone. So with the first question, you basically inverted, once again, another inversion. Inverted the usual understanding of freedom, how people like to actually say they want to be freedom, but actually they don't want to be free. They just want to be taken care of. But you actually inverted that here, saying, these people that the Inquisitor is taking care of, they act as if they don't want freedom, but perhaps deep down they really want it. So, I don't know, the presenter, maybe, what do you think of your inversion of your own inversion?
honestly, I need to kind of think about that because I myself didn't have an answer to the questions.
Anyone? Yeah. Yes.
It's my personal opinion, but as for the answer for question number 2, I thought it resembles a lot that the Inquisitor mentioned that we go to the church and under the certain permission we commit some sort of sinister behaviors. Like it's not a crime, but we do something very sinful and then we get permission to be to be free. And then I could relate those sort of events to the Inquisitors confessing his old, rebellious beliefs against the Jesus, and then he got kisses, and come back here. They kind of reconcile. So it looked kind of similar to me, that the Inquisitor inwardly have some sort of a inward belief for the God. So I connect with that. So I do believe that he has some sort of devotion, but misguided form.
So it sounds like you're saying perhaps believers go to church and maybe they go to confession and then they feel, okay, now I can go out and do my own things again. And then in a way that intimacy or the experience of faith or the forgiveness actually gives you the freedom to sin again. That seems to be what you're saying. So the Inquisitor seems to have the same kind of experience here. He got Jesus's kind of this law of forgiveness, and then he will go on to do what he always does.
I think like to answer the first question, like we as human beings have like kind of like two identities. Let's say one is the identity that we choose for ourselves, and the identity that comes with lived experience, and another is like not really an identity, but something that has always been within us. And as a creatures that have been like supposedly created by God, and if it was true, and which seems to be true like in the story, I think that body within ourselves and within the Grand Inquisitor really felt the divine power, and this was a response in which it trembled, and I think it kind of makes sense but I don't think it is him as a human being that is actually like responding to that. It's not his personality or his character that is actually responding in that way, but I think it's just the body that is created by God and just feeling the divinity and responding in that way, I think.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
After the monologue and the speech of the Inquisitors of Buddhists, Alyosha and Ivan, they were talking about it, and I think Alyosha started talking about a person who acts out of the love, and like he is just this pure person who loves humanity and just acts out of the pure love to the humanity. And he was talking about the fact that there can be a person like this, that I'm trying to find the words, but you understand what part of the...
Yeah, that's when Ivan is saying that I believe that there must have been someone like him.
Yeah.
In the corrupt history of the church, there still must have been someone like him.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I might think that it could be the Grand Inquisitor, because as the Tongmin said, that the Inquisitor talked about that the Inquisitor acted out of the paternal love to people, and the Inquisitor talked about the sufferings that she went through in the desert, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that to answer the first question, the second question, it might be the most extreme form of devotion to the thing that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes out of the love to humanity, it might be even more seriously than the ordinary believer, but just believe in God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of, so how to connect the two very nice comments. I don't know if anyone would like to try it. Do you see what it? So, because what you're saying, your name is visually in front of me, but I just cannot say it. Sorry.
Javelin.
Javelin.
Yes.
Shaolin. But Shaolin was saying it's beautiful because it is actually connected to this inversion that you enacted here, which means there is something like that's an essence. Just because you are created and you wanted to align that with the body, there is this essence that is kind of never corrupted by your personality, because personality is always a form of corruption. So you are kind of positing this essence that doesn't get corrupted by your personality, and then it's that essence that shuddered at Jesus kissing him. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So in a way, to connect that back to this question, the first question, it's that your personality actually, no matter what you say, okay, what you're saying, we're almost thinking at three levels. What you say that you want, but how you behave, which is always, so in other words, you say you want freedom, but all the things that you do actually seem to say that you don't want freedom, you just want to be taken care of. So that there's already a division, but you are adding another level where the truth of your being is, in a way, it's not your personality. It's certainly not what you say, but it's not even what you are doing. I mean, because personality in the end is a combination of what you say and what you do. Okay, so let's just think of that, all that as a personality. But there's something there that exceeds your personality that you don't own, you don't even recognize, and yet in certain moments of just a certain kind of genuineness, a certain kind of truth, that essence moves. And then you register it as what your body does. I think I'm in line with what you're saying,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Now, if you think about that in relation to the underground man, what he's doing there is basically, on the one level, he's doing what, intellectuals are supposed to do, which is to criticize, critique how the regular society is run by these people who are actually lying all the time. They say one thing and yet they do another, and then we've become a collection of liars. So he doesn't want that, so he wants to somehow strike through that thick layer of deception that is what we call society. So that's the bad kind of unkind reading of the underground man. He thinks he's better than the rest of us. Okay, got it. But the fact, why does he suffer? That's the problem. He's not going around just criticizing. He's the one who suffers more than anyone else. So in that suffering, what he's experiencing is this something like that essence, to go with your language, that, although sorry, that was my word, but anyways, you see what I mean. So that idea of that essence, he's actually protective of that essence being extinguished by this habitual run of the world. And he's betting that these people, they act this way, their personalities are at this level, but they all have the same essence as I do, because we're all that's where Dostoevsky as a Christian kind of comes in. There's that inextinguishable faith in humanity as God's creation. There's the Christian faith. So when he goes around criticizing people, he's actually telling them to wake up to that essence that they all have. And somehow he knows that he does, but these people, they have it too, but they just don't know. So it becomes a question of knowledge. And that is also why, that also kind of explains why the friends, they kind of let him ferment himself in their company. Instead of telling them to go away, they let him stay. And they want to see him completely abjected, which is, as I said last time, it's a completely ungentlemanly behavior, and they are kind of enjoying it. What is that enjoyment? At one level, yes, there's this enjoyment of someone becoming abject. This is why we have what we call poverty porn or whatever. Why is it people are fascinated? There's a certain kind of enjoyment. It's very shameful, but there is a certain enjoyment. There's that level, yes, but at another level, they're kind of feeling that essence that they have been so disconnected from. So in a way, people, because we all have that essence, I think we often, in literary figures, we see actually two kinds of reactions come. One is that when you sense that someone genuine is kind of touching that essence that you've been ignorant of or you don't want to actually think about, you become extra actually aggressive. You want to squish that person because it's inconvenient to be awake to that essence or be actually moved. And you feel, okay, I have a friend here. So this is the kind of permanent tension and antagonism that great works of literature, put into play all the time. So that's really well said. I think your question and your answer kind of, they work together very well. Okay, I think, sorry, you wanted to say something, right? Do you still want to say something? No? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Any comments, further comments, questions? Okay, then, thank you very much.
So,
Yes.
well, since everyone seems to start with a disclaimer, I also have a disclaimer. So, I think my ideas and my interpretation might be really biased based on my beliefs because I'm Christian. So it kind of felt like a personal attack. So I'm sorry if I seem kind of defensive in my sayings, but yeah. I like that we have completely different opinions though, because then it gives another insight. Okay, so I will start. So for introduction, this is the book 5, chapter 5 of the Brother Karamazov, titled The Grand Inquisitor. It's a story told, a poem told by the atheist Ivan Karamazov to his religious monk brother Alyosha. It describes Christ's return to Seville during the Spanish Inquisition in the 16th century, where it was really, Christianity was kind of messy at that period because new type of Christianity were emerging and everything, like the Protestant reformations. And Christ is imprisoned by Christ is imprisoned by the 19-year-old Grand Inquisitor, who claims that the church has corrected its fatal error of granting humanity dangerous freedom. This dynamic frames the story as a profound critique of centralized religious power. And I think that we really can't talk about this part of it without talking about, like, at least who God is, like who Jesus is, and give some Christian background. So I wanted to say so that Jesus Christ is understood to be both fully God and fully man, whose life established as the new alliance defined by love, grace, freedom, and individual conscience. Values that the Grand Inquisitor thinks humanity is not apt to take on their shoulders. So I will now start with my key ideas. My first key idea focuses on literary and theological irony. I'm not sure if it's my French self that sees irony everywhere, but I thought this was really ironic. And so my first key idea is called Dostoevsky's double irony, when the atheist tells the truest religious critique. And the small a is an amazing sense of irony. I think this author is really brilliant. It was really funny to me, actually. And so when I tried to look at the French translation of the book, and the chapter is actually called La Parabole du Grand Inquisiteur, which means the parable of the Great Inquisitor. And when you know what a parable is, it's really ironic already, the name of the title of the it's a teaching that Jesus uses a lot.
Right.
And Ivan is described as a real atheist. So the fact that he uses parable is almost like a mockery or maybe an irony. He's trying to tell us that I know exactly what I'm talking about. You can trust me, I know what I'm talking about. And so it was really interesting. And my second point is Ivan's biblical expertise. Even if, as I said earlier, this text might feel kind of weird to me, I have to recognize that Ivan he really knows what he's talking about. He really knows everything about the Bible, and I was really surprised. It demonstrates an excellent knowledge of the Bible. He uses this knowledge not for faith, almost as if he just studied the Bible to make a contrary or his own version of the Bible. He's trying to make a kind of like a chapter of the Bible that doesn't exist, and it's really funny to me. So, what made me think that he really knows is the passage where he said, "Oh, of course, this was not the coming of in which he will appear according to his promise at the end of time in all his heavenly glory, and which will be sudden as lightning flashing from east to west. No, he visits the triumph only for a moment." That shows that he knows that how he's introducing Jesus coming back is not what's supposed to happen, how he's supposed to come back. And that's a real detail that if you didn't study the Bible, you might not know how is Jesus supposed to come back. So I thought, wow, you really know what he's talking about. Then, the other type of irony is the Grand Inquisitor himself. I think his existence is an irony. The Grand Inquisitor is supposed to be a high-ranking Catholic religious, which means that he's supposed to know the Bible even better than Ivan. But the thing is that Ivan seems to know the Bible better than the Great Inquisitor. At least the Great Inquisitor is trying to refuse everything said in the Bible, but he's supposed to be someone that really knows the Bible, so I didn't understand. Let me calm down, sorry. His speech to Christ is cynical, authoritarian, and almost atheist in some terms. Like the most atheist is the believer, and the believer is the atheist. That's really interesting. His reasoning aligns almost with the devil's temptation in the desert, then with Christ's gospel. Almost like the devil is taking over him to say things. So now my B, small b, is the strong critique of Catholic authority and mankind. I think, so why I'm still talking about Ivan point of view is because, as the professor said, there's a lot of dimension. And I think to interpret this text, we have first to understand what Ivan says, and then try to say, oh, by that, Dostoevsky tried to say that. So for now, I will interpret Ivan and sometimes talk about it, but yeah. So for me, the context where this is happening is really important, since they mention it in the beginning of the text. So I would say that since he knows so much about the Bible, I will give him the right to say whatever he says. So he has the right to make a sharp critique of this, of Jesus or whatever. So the time period is really important, as I said before. It's the 16th century, a decisive period in Christianity, where Protestantism and Orthodox were threatening the Catholic power, especially the Pope power. So at that time, the Pope and all the Catholic institutions were trying to force themselves on people to reiterate the power or the fact that we were here before all of them, or at least we're the most credible ones. So you should believe us. You should not look at other Christians, which led to a lot of wars and everything. I think maybe you guys took West Civ, so it's what he's talking about. So I think here the author, Dostoevsky, is using this historical moment to highlight the tension between the spiritual faith and institutional power, almost as if the most high-ranking religious forgot what's the essence of their belief, because they were just trying to force their ideology instead of trying to spread what they believe. So for me, I found some key elements that make me think that Ivan is doing a critique of the period he's living in. The Inquisitor uses archaic informal terms like he, though, talking to Jesus, which is like, why are you doing this? And it creates a tone of judgment, addressing someone inferior. So I made my research, and yeah, these pronouns "the" or "da" are what judges would use for criminals or really inferior beings. So it's I'm not talking about ironies anymore, but that's also an irony, I think. And yeah, so the main critique is a church that lost its essence, trying to correct the Christ message instead of trying to spread it. To me, it feels like creating a new church, a new belief, because it's completely opposite to what they're supposed to spread. And I think I even also criticize the weakness of mankind. So we talked about it, but most people try to be under some type of authority, and so they don't try to interpret. Sometimes they don't try to interpret what's given to them, and I think that's the main weakness, because even in the beginning when we talk about the crowd, when the Inquisitor arrived, they just started spreading away as if they weren't trying to talk to Jesus just now. So I feel like they're so scared of the authority that it makes their weakness, because they cannot have their own ideas, etc. Okay, so that was my first key idea. And my second key idea is the role of the brother Alyosha and the silence of Christ, which is for me a strong answer, actually. I can say that every time where the Grand Inquisitor was saying something, the silence meant something. But this scene was really difficult for me to visualize, because I could just not visualize what I would do if Jesus was in front of me, looking at me, listening to me. I just couldn't visualize the scene, so it was really difficult for me. So, why I think Alyosha is important is that the author understands that this text is really difficult and not simple to understand. So Alyosha intervenes, comes every time the reader is lost. For me, all the time I was like, oh, Christ, what?
Christ.
Alyosha would say, I don't quite understand. Or he would find some sort of ways to make his brother stop and let us explain more himself. And I thought that was a really important role to keep us going with what's going on. And so for my small b, Christ's silence as a form of language. The silence in front of the Inquisitor monologue, for me, is a contrast of power through speech. So he's trying to, I think the way he speaks and he keeps adding words is just him trying to convince with his words. And so he's trying to enforce his power through his speech and through his words. But Jesus keeps silence, and for me it's the truth through silence. Because sometimes when you know you're saying the truth, and someone says you're not saying the truth, it's like, okay, whatever, believe whatever you want. I know that what I'm saying is the truth. So if you don't want to listen to me, then I'm just going to listen to you, right? So that's what I thought. And I think that as he speaks, the Inquisitor realizes that whatever he's saying starts to not make sense. But he already started, so he has to continue, and so he kept going. I'm sorry, I said I'm gonna be a little defensive, but yeah.
So far, you're very kind, actually. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought I was really. So I think that as he speaks, we understand that he's exposing his fear. For me, Jesus coming back is just a threat for the institution, because at that period for me, they weren't doing what Jesus wanted. So I think if they thought that Jesus would come and see what they're doing, then they would definitely be afraid of what it would say. And also, since they already have power, they're scared that Jesus coming back will threaten their power that they're already fighting for. That's why when the crowd was all over him, he said, no, I'm directly, because in the Bible, arresting Jesus is at the end. He was like, no, I know this story, I'm gonna go straight to arrest him. That's what I'm thinking. And the Inquisitor accuses Christ of giving people too much freedom. Yet, Jesus does not interfere in the Inquisitor's freedom. He doesn't even get that. Right now, the silence is actually a respect to his freedom of speech. It's freedom of opinion, because at the end of the day, the Christian values is really to not enforce an ideology to anyone. Anyone can think what they think is the truth. So here again, I think that by the silence means respect of another person's freedom. And at the end of all of that, I think the Inquisitor was waiting for an answer to all his questions and doubts and fear and everything. But Jesus still didn't talk, but decided to kiss him. For me, that's a gesture of love, forgiveness, and compassion. It's also an irony to me that this comes at the end, like almost at the end of the speech, because this is actually because Jesus said, I'm sorry, this is like a Bible camp or something, but so I just had to talk about this verse of the Lord because it kept reminding me that when he was first on the cross, the first thing he said was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So for me, my interpretation of this kiss is just God reassuring him that, yes, I forgive you because I know you don't know what you're doing, because you're still a man at the end of the day. So since this was the first thing Jesus did when he was on the cross suffering, for me it's really interesting that it's the last thing he does, and it doesn't say it at the beginning when he was first arrested. Now, for my interpretative argument, I took it from both ways. This is where I think I will talk about Dostoevsky, what he was trying to do, what the author was trying to do. So I took it from both ways as an author, but I also made search and he's Orthodox Christian. So first, as an Orthodox Christian, I think that the author uses irony and the silence and all these small details to reveal that true spiritual authority do not belong with institutional power, because then it comes to the loss of the essence of this Christianity. But people should stick, like, I think he's telling, I think for me, his brother Alyosha represent, I think, sorry, I have to put the words together. For me, Ivan is basically the author, and his brother is like an institution. Since his brother is a monk almost, his brother represents an institution that the author is trying to make all these critiques to. So for me, it's a direct way of speaking to institutions about how they should stick to God's message and love instead of going another way. So,
But I have to just footnote it that maybe people haven't read the whole book and may not know. Alyosha is actually given as a figure that the possibility of the church as an institution actually living up to the ideal of love. Yeah, Alyosha is he's a perfect figure. He's just love embodied. So, anyways, okay.
And now, finally, as a romantic and realistic author, I think he wants to highlight the human weakness and turn freedom into a really philosophical question. What exactly is freedom? What is freedom for you? It's different for everyone. So it's a real existential question. What do you think freedom is? Do you think that freedom is better, or do you think that control is better? There's a lot of questions that are not answered in the text. And I think that the author thinks that freedom is a very big responsibility, because most people struggle to make the correct decision when they have the decision between good and bad. They struggle to know exactly should I choose then. And so I think the author is trying to explain that, yeah, freedom is more than what you just think. So I prepared 2 discussion questions and a bonus question. My first question is, do you think the Inquisitor truly believes his own argument, or is he justifying his power? And my second question is, does the case redeem the Inquisitor or condemn him? And what meaning do you give to the case? What's your meaning to the case? I'm curious. And my bonus question is the philosophical question. Is true freedom a gift or a burden? It's again an opinion. You can just give your opinion. So yeah,
I missed one statement you just made. You said something about freedom being more than what?
freedom can be more than what we think it is.
Uh-huh.
So what I mean by that is that if someone is arrested, for example, freedom would be to go out of prison.
Right.
But then, if they're not arrested, what does freedom mean to them? Or if they're not oppressed, what does freedom mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Great. Okay. All right. Comments, questions? Yes.
I would like to answer to the first question. First of all, it was very interesting to look at this point of view. However, for the first question, I thought that he was just using this idea to justify his power, and then and you have mentioned that maybe Grand Inquisitor does not know what the Christ's thinking and idea. But I rather thought that Grand Inquisitor knows too well of the Bible, and then that is why it was possible for him to manipulate and use it as a tools of justification for his power. So that's what I was thought about while I was reading this book.
Yeah, I like this.
Do you really? I mean, do people think that he's holding on to the power? Is that the point of this character? Yeah.
I think like the Grand Inquisitor and Jesus' focus point is kind of like separate. Like they do both have all love for mankind, but I think the Grand Inquisitor loves humanity as a whole, not just an individual, but as a whole of a abstract community. That's why he uses these rational arguments and these for the sake of the better of all men. He doesn't want to exclude any like individual in his like ideology of love, and I think that's the reason why he kind of like opposes with Jesus's actions or beliefs. Whereas like Jesus, he's silent not only in like the confrontation with the Grand Inquisitor, but he just shows actions and like all these actions before he gets imprisoned, and he doesn't say anything from the start to the end. And I think the reason is because like he thinks his love for mankind is not for humanity as a whole, but he kind of like acknowledges each individual as an individual being, and that's why I think he's valuing freedom more than any value. So in that sense, like I think the Grand Inquisitor's argument could be like accepted if we view humanity as just a whole community, but that's not the point of religion in my opinion, because like in all religions, it kind of like focuses on
the individual self, like the elevation of an individual spirit or individual mind. So in that sense, I think like Ivan's ideology is also kind of like similar to the Grand Inquisitor because he focuses on the whole history and the whole like macroscopic scale of religion and like all these values. And I think Dostoevsky is trying to kind of criticize this, like religion is not just for all of us, like it's not a concept for just humanity as a whole, but it's the actions or the individual freedom, like the individuality and their consciousness is what kind of like makes this as a really valuable essence. So I think in that sense, this like tension is not only the tension within the inner self, but it's the tension between recognizing individuality and individual consciousness in a like topic, religious topic, and because it's so frightening and it's so uncertain, seem to kind of resort to the whole humanity or the whole like abstract community. So I think not just in the like sense of religion, but also in, since this class talks about existentialism, it kind of provides this tension between these two aspects, in my opinion.
Very good, very good. Yeah. I mean, because he says even, a Grand Inquisitor in his argument to Jesus, he says, people want a unity, which of course you have to really understand what he's actually saying, because we know that people like conflicts actually. so you have to understand what he means by that in that context. But unity means what? This is why, people like factions. You want unity where you are comfortable, you are definitely one with the community, so you don't need to, calculate these little, minute differences all the time. You are safe in that unity, right? So that's, I think, related to Jonghyuk, what you were saying about, when people are fearful, they want to think about the whole. They don't want to, because in a way, to actually be an individual takes a great amount of courage. So in that sense, you kind of run to the collective, which is something to think about in relation to what we were saying with Camus, where existential kind of task of being a man is opposed to the task of solidarity. You're building the community. So on the surface, it looks like we're talking about two different or almost opposite ideas, but they're not opposite, right? So that's the further point of development. I think that's very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Also, like adding on to that, like I think when I read the Grand Inquisitor, I first read it in high school, and I think I took it a lot in the face value of Christianity. But the second time I've been reading it, like I really actually understood it more, and like the idea of just the concept of faith not being attached to a particular religion, since a lot of religions objectively have similar features, and the study of faith, like religion as an anthropology, can be viewed as there being similar facets that act as like faith stabilizers for different groups, and I think that connects to what you're saying about factions. But I also think that this kind of figure and parable also connects to how humans interpret and interact with culture, and the concept of culture, regardless of like the use of religion. Since I think it really impacted me to read this after reading the article that you had us read regarding the play, because it was the idea of what is it? Like they use a different term that I remember, but like political, like
Realism?
Yeah, realism, but also the idea of like the forwardness, like forward or linearness,
Uh-huh.
linearity in
Yeah.
the positioning, and I think like taken generally in that light, I guess the Inquisitor as a figure of somebody who simultaneously believes so much in this cause and thinks he's doing this on this greater level, but also on the individual level cannot like deal with or like stomach this idea that Jesus isn't succumbing to this like his own I don't know, temptation kind of, that it just exposes that no matter what level or like the consciousness, it's always going to have this tension, I guess. So it doesn't make it like put a moral value to it, is what I interpreted it as. It doesn't make any sense. I actually don't know if that makes sense.
No. There were many points that resonated with what. So yeah, don't worry if you feel like you haven't given us a complete thesis. It's okay. Yeah, but I don't know. Do you want to respond to these ideas?
I think that after listening to everyone, I have a different idea. I have a different point of view of the Inquisitor. I think that more than just a religious person, he really tries to, as you said, he tries to look at the humanity as a whole and not like only individual. And if you look at, because really it's true, I really think it's true that religion is about personal encounter and personal experience. So from a religious point of view, maybe the Inquisitor might be wrong, but when we look at like for everyone, then there's different, there's individual values and like what's good for, well, it's very difficult to explain myself, but what I mean is, after your individual values, there's what's good for the group as a whole. And when we look at what he's saying, then maybe he's telling the truth, because humans don't even know themselves what they really want. And if he already has an opinion about what they really want, then he has to defend it, and then I respect his idea. I think it's not that bad after all. It can be understandable.
Yeah, I mean, of course, as I keep reminding you all, you can like or dislike the characters. At the end of the day, our task is to figure out what the text's position on these characters is. So what does the text think of the Grand Inquisitor, which is kind of in parallel with what the text thinks of Ivan, because the Grand Inquisitor is basically Ivan's own kind of projection. It's himself. And whether Ivan also is a projection of the author, Dostoevsky, that's another question, but we cannot answer that because we haven't read enough by his things. But I think he's probably a little more to the religious than Ivan. I mean Dostoevsky, because for him Christianity was for him Christianity was his existentialism, if that makes sense. It's to figure out yourself, but also your place in the society, how the world is unfolding. This was all for him played out through Christianity. So this is where, in a way, if you actually read the novel, this is a great novel to just like go under a thick blanket and read for days. And then, winter month, the Brothers Karamazov, it's pretty big, but there you actually meet, very colorful characters. You've met two brothers. There's one more legitimate brother, but there's also one brother who's illegitimate. He's not recognized by the father. So we're talking about 4 brothers. So Brothers Karamazov. Right, so there you see a lot of authors, a lot of sympathy towards unbelievers, but those sympathies come through his Christian understanding of the world. So I think if you read the whole novel, you would like it more because there's more Christianity. Okay, any further questions about, yes?
I just had a question about the bonus question. You said true freedom, and I was just wondering what do you mean by true freedom? Because I was thinking about this question for this whole time, and in my personal opinion, you can never be truly free out of anything. If we take an underground man as an example, he's free out of the society, but he still is trapped inside his own mind because of his thoughts. And I was just thinking, what do you have in your mind?
So for me, as I said, freedom can be defined differently for everyone. And for me, if you were able to obtain the type of freedom, if you think about your definition of freedom, and for you, you were able to reach that type of freedom, then that has to be the true freedom for you, because that's what you think freedom is. So it's the truth for you. It's again, that's why I was saying that it's really an opinion question, because it can be different for everyone. What you think freedom is, for me, is your true freedom. And so, is your true freedom a gift or a burden? It's like, do you think that reaching this true freedom is a burden, too difficult, or like an assignment? Or is it a gift, because then you can explore what you really think? And so that's what I meant by this question.
Right. So you mean no matter what your definition is, right? That's kind of the unwritten part of the question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to answer the bonus question since you mentioned it. I think I usually thought that true freedom is a gift, but like after reading these books and thinking about how the society is nowadays, I think it's kind of a burden.
Oh, I'm sorry. It makes me feel like before these books you were fine with freedom, and then after these books now you think freedom bad. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because ironically it gives us options. It might be something that's like joyful, happy, because we have a lot of options. But sometimes options are burdensome. And for example, in the notes from
Underground, yeah.
He also suffered from, I guess, a lot of options because he was very conscious. He didn't know what to do because he thought too much. And also, it kind of correlates with how the society is today because we have too many information. And personally, I think why people don't really look at, like, try to find news and just spend a lot of time on their social media is also because I think social media kind of filters the information. It filters the options, so it makes this a lot of information seem smaller than before. So it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you really think of it in terms of media literacy and all those kind of stuff. But at the same time, it also makes less burden for you. So I think it's kind of a burden in these modern times.
I understand. Actually, I can answer also the bonus question. For me, freedom is both a gift and a burden. Because let's take an example of someone that is really sick or that is doing re-education, trying to learn to walk again. Freedom would be to not be sick anymore or to be able to walk again. But then to achieve this freedom, they have to go through a lot of burden. So when this freedom comes, then it's a gift. But at the same time, it was a burden before becoming a gift. So for me, it's both, depending on what's your definition. Yeah, that's my answer to the question.
Okay, Jean and
John.
and then back to
Like as for the bonus question, I thought the true freedom should be marked with the quotation mark. Like I could link this question to the other candidate's case. And I think the true freedom can be absolute like in the are like in terms of the it looks like a spiritual concept, very abstract, and we have to challenge ourselves within this conceptual ideology. So like, I think the Grand Inquisitor himself kind of had her time in defining what sort of freedom truly means, and made a rough conclusion that maybe human beings just so like the freedom, and we need some majority and the control, and goes against the Christianity. So like however, like the true freedom doesn't really exist, and we have to constantly challenge ourselves and try to figure out the definition of this ideological being. So it looks like the Christianity, and it's the main point of this whole.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add to the bonus question. Like the only situation where the true freedom can be burdensome is because when we have to actually bear the consequences of our actions, because it really puts the emphasis on the human being as someone who is responsible for the action. And regardless of if it's like burden or a gift, it's already there. So I think, I have been thinking about this question for a while, even before the class, and my opinion on that is that I would like to be like kind of like a chameleon, or like to change. Like for the future actions that I'm about to take, I would love to think that I have the true freedom, which I can see as a gift. Meanwhile, for the past actions that have already been done, I would love to think that I had no free choice, or I had no freedom, which basically takes away the responsibility from me. And I think this is the only way in which I can attain happiness. It might not be like objectively true, but this is the reality that I live in, and I think if I truly believe in it, it can be my reality, kind of.
But thank you. That's very it kind of speaks to our hidden desire. So yeah, thank you. Okay.
I think also like when it comes to for the bonus question also like that I guess freedom is only like contingent on your situation and the human life, because in example like in The Stranger, Marcel like was really he was very free but also constrained by many things when he wasn't in prison, which he had the freedom obviously like to go and kill somebody. That was some sort of use of free will, but he was also really constrained by his like inability to kind of to not smoke or not indulge in his just simple desires, and he was not very connected with himself. But when he was in prison, he had a transformation, and he kind of was able to not be bound by his cigarettes or whatever else he was doing. But also like I think in like Anna Karenina, which is by Tolstoy, so another Russian author, like the main character is very famous because she has this like affair while she's married, and it's like a very big deal, and then she ends up killing herself. And before she has the affair, like she has no freedom, but she has a lot of access, so she has freedom in some ways. She has like access to society, but then after she follows her heart and has an affair, she has freedom in her love life, but she has lost all her access to her son, her former life, and so she's free in this other way, but she's actually in prison. And so the only way she actually had any, in my opinion, this is like not standard I think, but her only expression of freedom was killing herself. Like that was the first time she was really free. And obviously that's like, then you're not really free though. You're actually really constrained by dying. So I think that in all freedom is always just contingent on our perception of our surrounding and never without negative.
Actually, I think that it's a really philosophical concept. Like, if you really want to discuss what freedom is, it's worth like 100-page, like 1,000-page essay. You know? So yeah, I think there's, even if we find a definition, there's gonna be, but you said this is your definition, but then I find a default to your definition. So then there's a new definition, but then there's a default to this new definition. And so what I think that your story is really interesting, but it really shows that maybe there's no true freedom. And I guess that, but I think, I don't know, but you see, she acted to try to find freedom in her love life because she thought that that was a true freedom. Then she found the true freedom, and she was like, oh, I should just die. Then probably it wasn't true freedom, so I think we should, I think we can't define freedom. It's really an incredibly open question.
Yeah. Just like love. You can think of those together, but in any case, I'm sorry you had to stand there for a long time, but thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so in a way, the most important concepts that important in the sense that concepts that actually order our lives, and we feel we can we feel comforted by going back to, such as freedom or love. They are perhaps by definition impossible to define, but at the same time, when you have it, you know it. That's what I'll tell you. When you are free, you know it. That's how you know that such a thing exists. And to think about the example of learning how to walk again. You can think of that time spent on therapy or rehabilitation as a burden, but not everyone would feel that way. So you think that it's a burden only because you have already calculated your present position in the larger context of the whole too. So you already decided what the whole is supposed to look like. So I am doing this in order to get there. Of course, you're always going to be imprisoned because you're never there. You're always looking at something else and you're trying to you're never free. So I bet people who are in that kind of situation still find that everyday exercise as freeing rather than a burden. So anyways, so with the underground man as well, on the surface you may think that this guy is like so constrained. He's he himself says, I'm a mouse, all that. But at least for me, when I read him, I feel so free. There's just something so light about that character. So he's talking about all kinds of burden, and yet he's so light. The person is so light. So you know that there's something in him that is free, that is moving him. So it's the kind of, that's what literature kind of allows you to, you may think, oh, she's just fantasizing. Yes, well, so what? This is what literature is supposed to do. So, so to go back to kind of this idea, I wonder, maybe you can tell me, does Jesus say, forgive them for they know not what they do, before or after? Probably before. He says, Father, why do you forsake me?
Before.
Right? Yeah. So that is his final statement, question, plea to God. Father, why do you forsake me? And you're going to meet this phrase in the fall again. And some theologists have been trying to erase that statement. Why? Because it looks like Jesus has lost faith. So this is going back to Jesus being very special. Why? Because he's both God and human at the same time. So when he says, why do you forsake me? You experience his humanity. Right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that perhaps if we think of God the Father and Jesus as two separate entities, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, am I being blasphemous? I mean, but then you can almost think that this is just a thought experiment. I think it's interesting. And I can only do it because this is not a theological context. This is literature, right? You can almost think God, he created humans and he's thinking, oh God, they have this thing called freedom. I don't know what freedom is. This is God talking. Why is it that God doesn't know what freedom is? Because that's all he has. He is freedom. So in a way, I'm imagining, I'm kind of adding on to what Ivan is doing here. God is kind of thinking, okay, I can never experience freedom that this my creatures think so, is important. So in a way, to experience freedom, he sent down his son, Jesus. So we have Jesus who is both human and divine, and he gets to experience freedom in the most radical way, right? He could have said yes to what the devil is tempting him to do, but he didn't. And on the cross, he really experiences his human freedom in the most radical sense. He lets himself be killed. So to kind of defend the Grand Inquisitor, one can say that because we know that all the things that are said about him with Jesus confirm that he loves Jesus. He's a man of real faith. So what does he say? Not only the kiss, but he says, at the beginning of his interview with Jesus, he says, say something. And he says, I do not love you. And you immediately know he loves him so much. He loves him so much. So he has to say, I do not love you. And then in another part, he says something like, don't you know, I'm talking to someone, you, who knows everything about me. What is there for me to say? He says that. Of course, it doesn't make him stop talking. He still goes on to talk, but he basically makes all the important statements that reveal what a faithful subject he is. He is a true believer of Jesus, or of God. And then, after that kiss, glowing in his heart, he sticks to his idea. So that's where you kind of thinking, why does he do that? So there you can almost say that he can only love or even practice Christian love as a man. Meaning, the Grand Inquisitor can never be like Jesus, because Jesus is God. He's a man. So he's basically accepting or almost embracing the fact that he's but a man. So you can almost connect this back to what we saw in the play, where Taku says he wants to be a saint, he wants to be peaceful, and Ryu says, "What? My ambition is just to be a man." So here, the Inquisitor is basically saying, "I am a man. and I can only do this as a man. So that's I think what makes this figure extremely moving. And in that sense, I would almost say this taking his humanity so seriously. I think if I were God, I'm sorry, that's really blasphemous. But I would be kind of happy. Okay, he takes his nature, he's what he's supposed to be, extremely seriously. He's not trying to act as if he believes more than he does, or he can, act as if he can do more than he actually can. So there's something extremely sincere about this mad faith. This faith is mad, it's maddening. So that's one way of reading it. I don't know. You want to?
I was just thinking, I know definitely that probably he's saying the contrary of what he really wants to say, but the fact that he still says it is really kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
And also, so the most disturbing part was actually when he talked about the desert part and
Right.
says that, oh, you should have done that, you should have done that, you should have done that. For me, it's not like it's not criticizing, but I think it's saying, after all I've seen in this world happening because you did the other choice, you should have done that to make it easier for us. Like at the end, you thought that it's easy for us, but still there's difficulty in what you did. And now what are we supposed to do? I think it's more like a complaint than a criticize.
Right.
And so it's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, we went over time, so thank you, and I'll